Hello, folks. This is Joe from MIGeekScene. I'm here doing an interview with Schäffer the Darklord. Schäffer, how are you doing, sir?
I am doing very well. Thank you for having me.
No problem. Actually, my first exposure to you was on the track For the Gamers off of the Forever Famicom album that came out a while ago. And I was like, oh, okay. Huh. Because that was actually the first nerdcore album that I ever heard, because I met Mega Ran in person at an anime convention, and he had recommended that album, and For the Gamers is one of my favorite tracks of all time.
Oh, thank you so much. That's I believe 2010 now.
I want to say yes.
It's something like that. Thank you. That was first of all, that's an excellent record to be your first introduction to nerdcore. It's a perfect record. I stand by my conviction that Mega Ran is the best among us. And that record it's just a masterpiece.
I agree. And I was fortunate enough to see him perform at MAGFest earlier this year. And I had ran into you at MAGFest, and I don't know if you necessarily remember this, but I had stopped you briefly in the hallway, and I said, Schäffer, thank you for what you do. And you looked like you were legitimately taken back by that comment.
I do remember that. And that was really touching. You know, usually in the kind of chaotic environment of a convention, people will want to stop and, ask questions or give feedback, or maybe just say some kind of like a reference or non sequitur or something, so that I'll know that they are acknowledging awareness of my act. But that was a really sincere and genuine kind of touching bit of feedback to receive when I was probably manically rushing off to get to like another stage somewhere. And I appreciated that.
I mean, I appreciate what you folks do. I mean, you bring hours of entertainment. Like, I just love music in general, and it's just even at that time, I hadn't heard any of your albums besides the only song I heard you on was like I said, For the Gamers. But then after I started doing research into your stuff, I was like, wow, I really enjoy your stuff. But I just wanted to say thank you for what you do, because it takes a lot to get on stage and to create music and to put yourself out there for people.
Well, I appreciate that. I believe in that sentiment, that it does take a lot to put oneself out there and share, these things that tend to be frequently very like intimate thoughts and feelings that you have, and then give them to an audience of strangers on the internet and just cross your fingers that they're all going to connect with it, or that they're not going to, burn you down or something like that. However, I've always I have this kind of a more, I guess, crazed approach to it, and that I don't know how to not do this. I don't know what I would do with my time and energy if I didn't do this. There are definitely moments when there's a certain vulnerability that I feel when I'm releasing material just into the ether. But I also would continue to do it in spite of overwhelming sense of dread or vulnerability, because I just don't know how to not do this.
That's fair.
I need this. I just, something about from when I was a tiny child, I needed to perform, and I needed attention, and I just never had any fear or reservations about getting on stage in front of strangers and even making a fool of myself if that were the case.
That's fair. Actually, I would like to talk about your latest collaborative album, The Department of Darkness. So, basically just explain it for the audience at home that's not familiar.
Sure. I am very close friends with a producer who's a producer from Baltimore named Vince Vandal, he has been just grinding, working for so many people in the nerdcore scene for the better part of a decade, if not more. Very gifted, very busy. His name will appear in the credits of at least one record of every nerdcore artist you've probably ever heard. And we had done a lot of work together. We had produced he created beats and mixed an EP that I released in 2015 called Sex Rhymes, and I had hired him a number of times to either create beats for things that I needed, or again to just simply mix stuff. Or we'd work together in a variety of capacities. And we had a number of songs that were in various states of completion. And at some point, and I think it was his idea, like maybe early last year, as we were kind of looking at this pile of half-finished songs, he had the suggestion of releasing them as a fully collaborative effort instead of just another, this is a Schäffer the Darklord record produced by Vince Vandal, and give ourselves a group. Sort of instead of saying, LP and Killer Mike, calling it Run the Jewels. So I love that idea. I like the idea of these kind of shadowy, guilds and whatnot. I always enjoyed the artists that would create some sort of kind of mysterious, like, mythology around the project, and I just threw myself into it and loved the idea. So we continued working on those songs and made a guest list, or rather a dream list of all of the features that we wanted to get on it, and just decided to go in on this like fully collaborative, like, I don't know how to properly describe it, but a large crew effort. And we gave the songs on the album kind of a common motif of all being rather dark themes, or angry or aggressive or vengeance filled, and also all kind of tied to topical themes. And at the time, again, we had a number of songs that we'd been working, like, tooling with on and off for a number of years, and yet with Vince's magic on it, it came together and became this, what I feel is a very cohesive, clear sounding record that obviously has a point of view and a vision that seems to be consistent throughout the tracks. And I'm incredibly happy with how it came out, and Vince and I are certainly going to continue making Department of Darkness records.
Okay. I mean, I enjoyed it, and I can relate to the track "I Hate People."
That's actually how it started. Vince, in addition to working with a number of MCs, he releases this series of albums called Friends and Fandom, and he's done 2 of them, and it's this great project where he creates beats, and he creates them with specific MCs in mind. Then he'll send the track to the rapper and say, here's the track. This is the title that I've given this instrumental. You can write whatever you want, but you have to keep that title, and it has to kind of apply to the song. So he sent me the instrumental before we, even said the words Department of Darkness. He had sent me a track for an upcoming Friends and Fandom album, and it was a track called "I Hate People." And I felt a little bit like I was being typecast, because I think if somebody were going to write some misanthropic rant among his friends, it was most likely to be me. But it ended up kind of being the spark that created the whole record.
Okay, interesting. Actually, I wanted to learn a little bit more about you as a person instead of Schäffer the Darklord, the rapper.
Okay.
So, in an earlier album, in your song Black Metal Queen, you made a lot of references to black metal, especially the hard to read logos. And you've also worked with John Cobbett, who was in Ludacra. So, first exposure to black metal, sir.
Wow, my first exposure. Before I lived in New York, I lived in San Francisco, and I played drums in a number of bands. There had been a band that was kind of proggy, experimental, kind of genre-hopping space rock.
Was it Bottle Dog?
That was Bottle Dog, yes.
And you were in Burmese as well.
I was in Burmese as well. You did do your research.
Yes, I did, sir. Yes, I did.
When I was in Burmese, it was obviously much darker, brutal sound. It was more, had elements of grindcore and noisecore, just really chaotic live show, and just a sludgy, assaulting mess of 2 bassists and 2 drummers. And it was around that time when the members of Burmese, we all started listening to black metal, and I think we all read Lords of Chaos at the same time, and then we were all just fascinated.
Well, you answered one of my questions.
Yeah, we got really kind of obsessed with that whole scene and the history of that. Around that time, I met a woman just by chance in a bar in San Francisco, who she was currently, at that time, she was playing drums in a doom metal band called The Galt, but she had previously been a bass player in an American black metal band called Weakling, which had featured Josh from the Champs. And as we had just become black metal heads, like I had that record. I had the Weakling record, and I loved it. And we ended up having a relationship and later getting married. And that song. So when I was still doing the metal stuff, I was still working on my side project of this hip hop project. But my first batch of material was all still kind of influenced by the time that I'd spent enmeshed in the metal scene. So I was writing songs that were about other people's bands and kind of throwing lots of devil horns and wearing corpse paint on stage. And it was kind of a mess. But one of the things that came out of that I thought was fun is that I wrote this kind of Romeo and Juliet-esque love story about a rapper and a black metal musician. And I fudged a few details to make a cohesive narrative, but it was influenced by actual events.
Fair enough. Any favorite bands of the black metal genre?
Oh,
Emperor's my favorite.
Emperor's probably my favorite too. I will always probably default to Emperor just because of the song title, I Am the Black Wizards. I just love that that's plural, and it always cracks me up. And also, it's just a blistering song. I also, in that time, I got into Mayhem and Burzum and Opeth. It was kind of all I listened to for a period, but every now and then I go back, I get a little nostalgic, and I'll go out and I'll dig up my Emperor records and give them a spin. And they're as much fun to listen to now as they were then.
Oh, and the Nightside Eclipse and Anthems to the Welcome at Dusk are two of my favorite black metal albums of all time, hands down. Excellent entries.
Since
you had read the Lords of Chaos book, did you ever look into the band Sigh from Japan?
I did. I feel like I heard some of their stuff on mostly on a compilation that we had that was written it was like a bootleg CD that was all written in just basically an illegible font. And I'm pretty sure I was able to identify the side tracks that we were listening to, but I was never really certain. But I think that was about as much as I got into them. But I definitely only became aware of them because of that book.
Fair enough. I mean, I went down the rabbit hole with that band, actually, and it was just it's okay black metal, but then they started becoming this avant-garde metal band, and I think they're awesome. I look forward to their albums every time they release it.
Yeah, I think every time that the members of Burmese and I started to get deeper into as we got deeper into our black metal fascination, we kind of splintered at a point, and we got kind of consumed with extreme noise acts like White House, and that just kind of ruined us. And I remember years ago, I still haven't seen the Lords of Chaos film adaptation, but I'm a bit nervous because I saw that documentary until the light
takes us.
Yeah, and oh boy, was that upsetting to watch. I realized that these guys had some really toxic ideas and values, and reading about it in kind of a more sterilized fashion in this almost historical record in a book was one thing, but seeing Varg, seeing his face, seeing him smile as he delighted in saying horrible things, really had a pretty profound impact on me as far as kind of sullying at least Burzum's music.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, he came off quite charismatic in that film, but I was for those who actually know, I was this dude's horrible,
Yeah. He is a genuine monster.
I mean, are you still listening to metal nowadays?
Not much. I haven't listened to much new metal in a long time. I go through periods where I kind of go back and revisit periods of music that I got really into, and then I'll get kind of swept up in that for a while. And I think most recently I've had a very kind of a prolonged nostalgia ride, exploring all of the stoner metal bands that I used to love, like Melvins and Sleep, and I just find that stuff is like timeless for me, because I will never get tired of like a slow, dirgy, just gnarly, grindy metal song like that.
Oh yeah, Sleep, their latest album. Oh man, forgive me for that one. I just listened to that recently for research for another interview, and that was pretty solid, because I have their Holy Mountain album. But
oh yeah. Wait, they have a new one?
Yeah.
And it's good?
Yeah.
I find like I always have to say things like that by default with an air of surprise in my voice, because it's because I'll go back and I'll revisit bands that I used to love, and then I will be curious to see what they're up to and find that there's new music that is like on the way, and with this freshly renewed interest in them, I set up these expectations that cannot be, delivered upon. I find I get disappointed by that, but I will absolutely seek out a new Sleep record.
Yeah, I would recommend it. It looks like it has an astronaut on the cover, so I can't think of the name at the top of my head, so forgive me for that.
No problem.
So actually, I wanted to go on to the next topic.
Okay.
I wanted to talk about comic books with you.
Yes.
So we'll tie it into the song first. In the track Watchmen from the upcoming Dewey Decibel album, System album, you played Dr. Manhattan. Did you personally pick him when you guys were creating the song?
I did not, and I am glad that I was not given the opportunity, because in the same way that I really appreciate how Vince Vandal will give a rapper an assignment and say, here's a beat, here's a title, you've got to make that work. I kind of like that challenge and that discipline, because when I'm left to my own devices, I will labor over something for an ungodly amount of time and end up coming up with something frequently that feels forced and labored as a result. And I also feel I would have a tendency to pick the most on-the-nose selections if I were given options. Like if Lars had come to me at the beginning and said, hey, we're making a Watchmen song, everybody has to do 8 bars as a character, pick one, I would have, broken my arm trying to call dibs on Rorschach or the Comedian immediately, because I would have been like, oh, they're dark, they've got a bunch of funny punchlines, they're terrifying monsters, like that's all in my wheelhouse. That's the character that I relate to. That's a character I related to as a teenager, or both of them that I related to as a teenager reading the books, because I didn't understand like the kind of, complicated aspects of the character. I just knew that they were doing terrible things in the comic and they looked cool in their costumes. Of course, I became an adult and realized that they're both, they're just both horrific characters in reality. But a part of me would still feel that instinct to be drawn to one of those two characters. I would not have picked Dr. Manhattan. And I love that Lars assigned me Dr. Manhattan, because it was a challenge that I wouldn't have done. And I ended up really enjoying writing that verse.
Okay.
Specifically, there's one part of it, and I'm going to pat myself on the back here, but one of my favorite things that I have written in the past few years is trying to stay true to John's character from the book. There's a line in my verse where I say, I am 99 syllables in 8 bars. And it checks out. If you take the time and sit down, my verse is 99 syllables.
Wow, dude.
Yeah, that's tricky to write. I found that was a challenge to write, because you can't really write the number without the count. So you got to kind of anticipate like a couple of syllables over or under. But that worked out, and I'm very proud of that stunt that I pulled off. And I'm mostly saying it now because nobody has acknowledged it, because I don't think anybody's actually taken the time to sit down and count the syllables, because that would be crazy.
Okay. Is Matt Fraction one of your favorite writers?
By far. If not, I think I can safely say Matt Fraction is my favorite writer. I think I've only read one title by his that I wasn't dazzled by, and even then I still enjoyed it, but it just didn't stick to me the way everything else does. The stuff of his that I have enjoyed the most, his run on Hawkeye, Sex Criminals, Odyssey, I love all of that stuff, like passionately. I think he's a genius. But and he oh gosh, I'm not gonna remember what it is. He did oh god, I can't remember. Satellite Sam, which was also great, where he had worked with Howard Chaykin, who had done the Black Kiss book ages ago, and
Astro City too.
And Astro City, yeah. And I just find that like Matt Fraction has a gift for kind of writing in a way that best complements. Not only can he write a variety of different styles for whatever kind of setting the particular book is set in, but I find he has a knack for like tweaking his writing in a way that best complements the artist that he's working with. Like he wrote Hawkeye. He writes Hawkeye very differently than he writes Sex Criminals. And the way he wrote Satellite Sam was very different than anything he's written. I think he's a genius, and he's probably the only comic book author I ever met and I got very, very star-stricken and then kind of sweaty palmed. And, you know, I don't ask people for autographs, but I got one from him and I was like trembling. I was a very stereotypical fanboy when I met him at Comic-Con.
Nice. I had actually reread the Hawkeye Omnibus in prep for this interview too. So thanks for bringing that up randomly in a conversation. I was like, okay, I'm gonna write that down. I've read like the first volume of that, and I was like, oh, there's an omnibus now. And then I went back and I checked that out. So thank you for bringing that up.
I would love to get the omnibus because I find there are a few books that I will read in their various publications. I'll read the monthlies, I'll read the trades, and then I'll read the omnibus. And it's ridiculous because I live in New York, so I have a finite amount of space where I can put these things. But I also find that it changes the way the story, the way I connect with the story and reading it. Like sometimes having 30 pages a month is this kind of interesting cliffhanger heavy episodic experience, but sometimes you just want to like kind of plow through and see how the author had it all like mapped out from the beginning when you had to wait a year to get the whole story. So if knowing that there's an omnibus of that, I would read it again because bro, tracksuit vampire, tracksuit Draculus, bro. Everybody who read that book did that incessantly for like the summer of 2015 or something. Bro, you're gonna get hurt bad, bro.
From what I understand, you're a big fan of Batman. So,
yes.
Do you have any particular favorite Batman stories or artist runs or writer runs as well?
Wow. I don't want to pick any of the kind of most obvious answers because I feel like they have all gotten. Frank Miller has gotten, and Alan Moore have gotten plenty of shine over the years when it comes to Batman. I think that Scott Snyder's Court of Owls story from the launch of the New 52, I think is brilliantly executed. And I think that, or I hope that anyway, that in time it will be, it will sit up there alongside Death in the Family as far as the classics are concerned. And Death in the Family, having reread it in the past couple of years, isn't even that good. But it's important in the timeline of Batman. But I think the Court of Owls was brilliant, and it was one of the best things I read at the launch of the New 52 because it felt like there's fresh talent in here. They are breathing new life into these properties. They're showing us things we haven't seen before, and while still making it familiar. And I thought that was excellent.
Yeah, actually, I had recently purchased two Batman omnibuses, actually. Or Batman-themed omnibuses. I bought the Tim Sale and Jeff Loeb complete run on Batman. Like Long Halloween, Dark Victory.
Those are so good.
Yeah, I really love the artwork for that. So.
The artwork is so good. I feel like every artist who gets to draw Batman, especially when they get to do like kind of an event story, like we'll say the Long Halloween, I feel like all of them deep down, there's a part of them where they're just killing time until they get to do that splash page where you see the whole rogues gallery gathered together. Nice. Every comic book artist wants to draw that splash page with all of the Batman villains. And the one in the Long Halloween is probably the best of all of them.
And the other book I bought was Gotham Central.
I'm not familiar with that.
I think it was done by either Ed Brubaker or Greg Rucka. I think it's Greg Rucka, or Rucka. I don't know how to pronounce his last name. And basically, it was like Law and Order meets Gotham City. So it's not even from the perspective of Batman. It's from the perspective of like the detectives and the police people who are working on the streets of Gotham. So there's police corruption. You'll occasionally see like some of Batman's rogues gallery show up. Batman very rarely shows up, actually. And I think it was just an interesting take on the Batman universe set in Gotham.
When was this published?
Oh, Within the last 10 years?
I don't know. I mean, because it sounds like it might have served as some inspiration for the showrunners behind Gotham.
Oh, it was like only, I think, 40 issues and it was done.
Huh. That sounds great. I love a good, gritty cop drama, and put it in the Batman universe. I'll read it.
I would recommend it.
That's good enough for me. I'll put it on my list.
All right, I do have like 2 more comic book questions.
Sure.
Which keys would you use from Locke and Key?
Oh, I just had a conversation with a friend about Locke and Key a couple of days ago that just kind of reminded me I really need to treat myself to another run through of reading everything, all of the additional like supplemental materials as well as like the main story. It's hard for me to even remember what all of the keys are at this point. Like, I remember the one that Bode used I remember the scene the first time Bode discovered the key that opened his head.
Okay, yes.
And you could look inside of a person's head and see like this little diorama of tiny moving characters displaying their like thoughts and fears and whatnot. And I thought that was brilliant. And I thought that's the kind of thing as a kid, if I had read that, I would have spent weeks daydreaming about having that access to that kind of power. But I am kind of having a hard time remembering a lot of the keys now, which is kind of why I would like to read it again. I'm just going to stick with head key because that's the one that I remember most vividly. I remember the expression on his siblings' faces in the final page of that chapter when he's just standing there with this silly Bode smile on his face and his head is open.
I would take the key that I forgot the name of it, where you could put books in your head and get instant knowledge of that book that you placed in there. Oh
yeah, that's pretty cool. That's that would have been really handy in like college days. I also remember like there's in one of the kind of spin-off shorts. There's a story that takes place in the past where a couple of bad guys, like robbers, they're like on the run and they like terrorize this family. They're kind of like holding them hostage and saying all kinds of threatening, menacing things. And there's a key that if you pass through a door with this key, you swap genders.
Yes.
Do you remember? Yeah. And they end up like trapping this bad guy in it. He goes through and he can't get back out. And, he's this horrible, like misogynist. So it's this kind of just reward to like, haha, now you are trapped, etc. But I remember reading that and thinking like, all right, that's cool that this is being used as like the revenge part of this story, but that would be pretty fun. I think that would be fascinating if there were the ability to just experience being another gender, in this, but not, but in this like kind of magical, like snap of a finger sort of way.
Yeah, I can see that. I mean, one of the chapters, you mentioned like a side story. One of the chapters from Locke and Key that stood out to me was, I think Bode had turned into like a bird, and like the whole chapter was drawn like Calvin and Hobbes from Bill Watterson.
Oh my God, that was beautiful. I remember that. Yeah. And
that just stood out to me because I'm a huge Calvin and Hobbes fan.
Sure. That had like the same kind of impact as like the Dogs chapter from Matt Fraction's Hawkeye, where all of a sudden the story just takes this crazy turn in style and narrative to tell you this incredibly kind of like short emotional story using like almost no dialogue.
Oh yeah, for sure. All right, now one more question on the comic book topic. Do you read manga?
I don't. And not for a lack of interest. I guess it's kind of largely just overwhelming because it's this huge world that I don't even know where to start. That's not for any shortage of recommendations I've been given over the years. But I find that kind of always like I see somebody like flipping through one on the train and I'll be like, I want a little digest size book that I can read from right to left. I don't know. I will sometimes like flip through them like at the comic book store where I hang out, but I'm not. I can't even say I'm not very well read. I am just not read.
That's fair.
And I feel similarly about anime in that, I've seen a decent amount of anime, but I've seen all of the most entry level anime, and I've enjoyed everything that I've seen, and I've strayed from that path, and I've taken some recommendations from friends and looked into things, and I've seen things that I am just dazzled by, and yet I still don't invest the time in going out to seek more of it. I collect recommendations are piled up to the moon, and I have no idea when I'll ever get through any of it. There's just too much media to consume now.
I agree.
It's just, I just don't have time.
So, all right, since you did mention anime, I will have to say thank you to you, because after listening to you and Lugo talk about it on your epic podcast, I decided to give Mob Psycho 100 a shot. And
oh, yeah.
I enjoyed it, and I'm looking forward to the dub release of Season 2, because Season 2 just started coming out, I believe, in Japan.
Yep. I owe my knowledge of Mob Psycho 100 to Lex the Lexicon Artist. Because she also hella dope MC, and she had done this EP, this tribute EP to Mob Psycho 100, and she had reached out to me and asked me to do a guest verse, and she was assigning like specific characters. Again, this is another example of getting assigned something and really appreciating the sort of discipline of that. And I talked to her at cons about Mob Psycho, and it was another thing had been recommended to me by a number of people. But I just kind of kept not doing it until it was homework. And then I took the time and did it. And it was just so good. I just couldn't look away from it. I binged it, and then I binged it again. I binged it, got a feel for the character that I had to write, binged it again for details, loved it. She's been in contact with me as season 2 has been airing. And I feel, I don't know. I don't know. Again, I'm so not versed in anime. I don't know if I'm supposed to feel shame about this, but I haven't been watching season 2 because, like you said, I'm waiting for I'm waiting for the dubbed version. Wait, is that what you said? Were you?
Yeah, the dub release.
Or you're waiting for the subbed? I'm waiting for the dub release, or what?
No, I mean, I'm waiting for the dub release. I'm not one of those people who are like sub versus dub. Like, I have to do dub or sub. I can go either way. But I've got so much on my plate, like as far as like things to watch for like preparation for other interviews and stuff like that. So my time is very limited. So when the dub release comes out later down the road, when I have some free time, I'll gladly check it out.
Yeah, and that's kind of what I did. I don't have a problem watching subtitled cinema or anime or anything. But I also was kind of on a time budget, and I didn't realize how taken by the world of Mob Psycho I was going to be. I was like, this is an assignment to write a song. I'm sure it'll be great, but I just got to get through it. So I'm going to watch the dubbed version. But after having gotten through it, and like twice in a week or something like that, like I am really invested in those voice actors now. Like I saw a clip that somebody had posted like when the first episode of season 2 aired, and I watched online because I'm like, ooh, goody, more Mob Psycho, and it was great. But like I hear Reagan's voice in my head, I hear Mob's voice in my head when I see those images of those characters, and to not hear the same voice actors, like kind of qualified the experience for me a little bit. But now that the season's done, I'm just going to wait patiently until season 2 comes, and I will probably watch it in the exact cumulative running time that it exists, because I can't imagine I'm going to want to stop once I start, especially given the incredibly glowing endorsement that the season got from Lex.
Did you take a cosplay photo with her when she was as Mob and you were Reagan?
Yeah,
I thought that was you.
The song we did. Yeah, the song we did for her EP was Self-Proclaimed Psychic, where I play Reagan Artaka and she's Mob, and we were both performing at MAGFest this year, and we knew that this was going to be like just a couple of weeks before she released the EP, and she had posted a picture online of her in a Mob cosplay, and I had all of the elements to make a Reagan cosplay except for like a passable wig. So I ordered this. I was like, when we're at MAGFest, we'll get some pictures. You can use them to promo the record. Maybe if you do that as a single, whatever. I just think it would be fun because now I live in this world because you introduced me to it. And I remember that like the problem with it was like I didn't have a solid wig. I had this kind of blonde wig that kind of worked, and then I ordered like this other wig online, and it came, and I didn't know how to cut it or style it correctly, like, but the color and texture were right, and neither of them were really like lining up. So I figured I would just ask her which one was going to be the closest when I got to MAGFest, and much to my delight, she had brought a Reagan wig with her that was perfect. And so, so we met up with my friend Pixel Journalism, who is an event photographer for MAGFest and lots of other kind of nerd convention stuff. And we squeezed in like a kind of impromptu guerrilla shoot around the Gaylord Center and got those shots. I'm really glad we did, because I think it came out great.
Excellent. Have you ever checked? Have you checked out the guy who created One Punch Man? He goes by One. Have you ever checked out his other show, One Punch Man?
I started because I got excited. There wasn't enough Mob Psycho for me, and everybody else that I had shared my delight of Mob Psycho with was like, "Oh, you got to watch One Punch Man." And I started it, and I loved it. I just didn't finish it, and it had nothing to do with me not connecting with it or not being impressed with it or anything. There's just too much meat. Again, I got sidetracked by something else, and I got to go back and get caught up.
Oh, that's fair.
But it's great. But it's great too. Yeah, I love it.
I love the animation on that one. It was just phenomenal. Have you seen Samurai Champloo?
Yeah. I have not. That's one I have not seen.
Okay. Because
should I add that to my towering list to the moon?
Absolutely. The reason why I say that, because that show is heavily influenced by hip hop culture.
Oh, you don't say.
Yeah.
Well, I'm sold.
Talk to Megaran about that, or K Murdoch, because Kyle has the tattoo on his wrist, that blue ring around his wrist. That is that is a tattoo that Mugen, one of the main characters from Samurai Champloo, has on his wrist. Kyle got that tattoo because it was inspired by Mugen from that show.
Oh, this is great. I'm like you're like unlocking Easter eggs about my friends for me, and I appreciate that. I will definitely. I'm about to spend a lot of hours in a van with Megaran, so I got to have something to talk about other than wrestling. So Samurai Champloo is something I'm definitely going to pick his brain about.
Oh, for sure. And like the soundtrack is awesome. It's pretty much nothing but hip hop beats. And unfortunately, the man has passed away. His moniker was Nujabes, and he just did like these great beats. I would highly recommend it. I would highly recommend the soundtracks to it as well. It's just a great anime show. It's only 26 episodes, self-contained story. You don't have to worry about like endless seasons. And it's got a pretty good dub. Steve Bloom is the voice of Mugen. He's one of my favorite voice actors. He was Spike Spiegel from Cowboy Bebop, another show that I recommend.
Okay.
So,
I know Cowboy Bebop. So when I said like when my anime knowledge is all like kind of the most entry level stuff, like I love Cowboy Bebop.
Same here. Shinichiro Watanabe was the one who directed Cowboy Bebop, and he also directed Samurai Champloo as well. So I don't know if you're a publicist for this show, but you just sold it so hard to me. I'm not. I'm just a huge fan of like.
That's a great list of bullet points to get me to watch something right there.
Excellent. Hopefully, I can talk to you about that in person down the road somewhere.
Yeah, maybe I can. If I can squeeze in a few episodes before Michigan, I can thank you in person.
Oh, all right. Now, we'll go on to, because you mentioned earlier that you would like you're going to be with Megaran, and you wanted to talk about stuff other than pro wrestling. Well, I would like to talk about pro wrestling right now, sir.
Let's do it. I love talking about wrestling.
I do too. Tie it in once again to music. I enjoyed your tracks, Heel Team and One Fall. So,
thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. They were well done. So,
thank you very much.
Why did you choose Samoa Joe's theme for the track One Fall?
Samoa Joe is my favorite WWE superstar. And I don't know if one of these two things, if this is like a chicken and the egg or if it's just coincidence, but he also has my favorite WWE entrance music. And I don't know if I like him because I like his music so much, or if I like his music so much because I like him so much. It's hard to say. But that's why I chose it. I couldn't, I was kind of like, I was really kind of marking out for him right before the Joe chant started. Because I feel like that's only kind of a product of like the last year and a half or so. Or at least maybe I was only aware of it then, because I know that every time he came out, I would just be hypnotized by him. And every time, by the time like his entrance was done, I became aware that I was sitting in place, bobbing my head as though I was waiting for a verse to come in. It's just, I mean, it's my favorite wrestler's theme, and it like invokes like Godzilla soundtracks, and it's got that great kind of like boom bap beat that I love, and it's just, I just think it's so great. And so it was the obvious choice for that. It wasn't even like it wasn't even as though I was out looking for a song so that I could make a wrestling hip hop song. I didn't have a plan to make a wrestling hip hop song. I just, after like every time I would see him and get more and more into him, I was just like, I have to make a song out of this, and I have to do it like in somewhere I can release it, because I'm not going to have rights to it. So one of my upcoming, like, I had another collection of sample heavy material I can't sell, which I released under the titles Junk Drawer, was coming up, and I was like, that's it. I'm taking his beat and I'm writing something for it, and that's what I ended up with.
Yeah, because from what I recall, like when he was on the indie scene, especially in Ring of Honor, because I used to watch. I actually have about 70 old school Ring of Honor DVDs from back in the day. That's where I came into Samoa Joe, and I knew him from Pro Wrestling Guerrilla too. But from what I recall, he always had part of the Godzilla theme song incorporated into his entrance when he was on the indies.
Oh, okay.
So.
Oh, yeah, I should go back and watch him. I mean, I haven't gone back any further than, his like run in NXT, which was also before my fandom really took hold.
No, that's fair, dude. I'm not gonna be like,
but
I'm not gonna hold you to those standards of that indie mark, that looks down on everything.
Oh,
absolutely not. I don't mistreat people because like they like different things to me. I think that's ridiculous. I think like if you're into pro wrestling and I'm into pro wrestling, let's try to find a common ground and we can go from there.
Yeah, I think that is. I think that is a great attitude about approaching how you discuss pop culture fandom with somebody, and it's also, and it's almost hurts to say this, it's delightfully refreshing to hear that, because the opposite has become so much more true. It seems like in the past several years that wanting, like, people have been reading comics for 30 years. They can't resist but admonishing new fans who are, lining up to see Avengers because they didn't read, a certain issue from years ago. And that transcends, like, that kind of behavior shows up in all pop culture fandom, and wrestling is no different. That does show up. I've definitely been sort of scolded by like longtime wrestling fans for not knowing any of the full history of any WWE superstar before they made it to the company whose name will not be said. So thank you for being one of the people who just lets people enjoy things. I appreciate that, and I feel like that could benefit everybody.
It's just, that's how I've been. I mean, I used to be that comic book fan that was like hung up on like the earlier stuff, like, oh, it's not following the comic book. Yeah, it's incorrect. But then I thought about it. I was like, wait a minute, this is an alternate universe. Look at it from that point of view. This is their interpretation about that. And just let it go. There are far more things to worry about than whether they're getting it panel for panel correct. I was like, get over yourself. No one really cares in the long run, Yeah. I read The Walking Dead and I watch The Walking Dead, and I enjoy both of them. And I know that there are a lot of people who, especially folks who've been reading it for 12 years, that also they cannot help but like express their displeasure whenever the TV show, varies from the identical plot points in the book. And I don't understand that, because I'm thrilled if you enjoy a world, you get multiple versions of this narrative, and in a way that like also benefits you, because you can't always predict what's going to happen, because you get like changes. And the Marvel cinematic storytelling does a very similar thing. If you like a thing, why wouldn't you want multiple things of a thing? You get more of the thing. I just don't understand. I agree. And why would you want to push away people that are into the same thing as you.
Yeah, those people spend money on that thing, and that gets you more of the thing. I don't understand. It's just people just want to hold so many of their things like so precious to them, and that ends up resulting in some of the more like toxic elements of fandom and entitlement.
Yeah.
Anyway, I went off on a tear there, and I would really rather talk about wrestling.
No, that's fine, dude. That's completely fine. So, you were lucky to be present for it. So, thoughts on WrestleMania 35?
That was I've gone to now. Just so there's sort of some context for this. I was a fan of WWF when I was a little kid for like 4 years or something like that, and it was. I guess if I say what it was, I'm going to age myself, but I'm old. I'm middle-aged. So I was there. I was watching it around the time from like WrestleMania 2 through WrestleMania 5. And so I saw like, I had a friend and they had a satellite dish, like one of those big satellite dishes that like sits out in the front yard in the Midwest. So they could get pay-per-views. And I saw the first Royal Rumble and the first SummerSlam and the first Survivor Series because those were all like within the same year or two. And I was really into it and I loved it. And then just one day overnight, all of a sudden I was like, I'm in my adolescence now. And what I really want to do is smoke drugs and ride skateboards and listen to punk rock and have sex. And was like suddenly just distanced myself from wrestling entirely. It was like, I'm ashamed of this. This is kid stuff. This isn't anything I want to do. And I didn't ever look back. I always held like kind of this warm place in my heart for it because I still appreciated everything that wrestling is, even though I didn't follow it. So I missed out on everything through the 90s. I missed out on the Attitude Era. I missed out on WCW. I missed out on ECW. I missed all of that. The Rock, Stone Cold Steve Austin. I missed all of that stuff in its entirety. No, I was aware that by pop culture osmosis, that these were personalities that existed in the world of wrestling, and I was thrilled that wrestling was still carrying on, but I didn't have any interest in it. And then just inexplicably, like I was just walking through the woods and I stepped in a bear trap like 2 years ago and accidentally just fell into wrestling fandom, and it sucked me in. Like it knew that there was this dormant flame inside me, and it just had to like just blow on it a little bit, and it just caught hold of me. And now I'm old enough that I don't have shame in the things I like. I don't even use the phrase guilty pleasure because I think that's nonsense. I don't think you should be ashamed of anything you enjoy. There's no guilty pleasures. There's just pleasures. And I get a tremendous amount of pleasure from watching wrestling. And of course now I've gone back and I've watched a bunch of like kind of classics that I was supposed to have seen. And I've like looked around into following some of the more like indie promotions, and I've seen lots of local shows from like local indie promotions, and I just kind of can't get enough of it. And I feel like I'm still, as I'm staying on top of it and being very passionate about it, I'm still like just hungry to fill in those like 30 years of a void that I missed out on. Anyway, so that's the context. That's the world in which my wrestling fandom exists. And I've gone to, in the past 2 years since I've fallen head over heels into this fandom again, I've gone to lots of live events, of house shows when they do like, the WWE tours. And like I said, lots of like indie promotions. And I've been to a number of Raw and SmackDown tapings, but I'd never been to a pay-per-view. There was an opportunity to go to a pay-per-view in Baltimore with Vince Vandal like a year or two ago. And somehow it just didn't work out, but that was kind of the thing I wanted to do. And this year I had an opportunity to go to WrestleMania, and I just did the whole weekend so hard. I did all of it. We did NXT TakeOver. We did WrestleMania. We went to Access. We did Raw and SmackDown. Like I just saw everything that I possibly could. And having said all of that, WrestleMania was just freaking amazing. It was just so amazing to be there.
Were you by chance at the Hall of Fame as well?
I did not go to the Hall of Fame. I had a gig that night. So that was the one night of the giant WrestleMania weekend, or at least the WWE stuff, because that was also the night of ROH and New Japan at the Garden. So I didn't get to go to that either. That was the one thing that weekend, the one part of at least the WWE package that I didn't go to.
Okay. I mean, because like I guess topical. Like I was when I found out about it, I was incensed by the whole Bret Hart situation. Like, I was like, are you serious, dude? Like, this, like, what part of you made you think that it's like, this is going to work out well, you know? And
yeah.
And it's
like,
such disrespect.
I know that like big sports spectacles have a history of attracting somebody who wants to use that moment to get themselves some kind of attention. Like, you know, somebody runs out onto a soccer field, or somebody runs naked across a baseball field until they get tackled by security. Ha ha ha. But this guy, like, actually assaulted a guy speaking, like, heartfully about his late tag team partner as they were being honored. About, specifically, a guy who was so historically sensationally screwed by his company, and then he has to deal with some clown jumping out of the audience trying to grab himself a couple of minutes of attention by like physically attacking him. That was horrible. All of those like cell phone videos of the guy getting dragged out, just like getting dogpiled on by not just security but a ton of WWE superstars in like formal wear, and them just taking shots at him. It was pretty satisfying.
I agree.
Like, of all the places, it's just surrounded by people who like are bodybuilding stunt folk who like fight professionally for a living. You goofy bastard! Why? And I love that like that story that happened, and it was a couple of weeks, and it got shared a million times. And so many people were posting about it and talking about it and like saying terrible things about this guy. And I still don't know his name.
I do,
because I'm glad that I don't, because at least parts of the fandom did the right thing by like kind of like admonishing this guy's behavior, but not like saying his name and giving him the kind of like widespread attention, which one would suspect was the end goal of a stunt like that. I don't know who he is, and I won't ever know who he is. He's a guy who got punched in the face a bunch of times for being a dick. Good.
Yeah, that final shot that Dash Wilder gave him, that floored him. I love that.
Like a haymaker. Ooh. I love that, and I mean, kind of one of the benefits of that is I love seeing like these kind of candid looks into the real world camaraderie among the performers in that world. Like, I loved to see how they all, like, nobody hesitated. They all were just like, there's like this code of honor where they all just got together. And even if that meant sort of lightly breaking kayfabe for the sake of coming to the defense of one of their heroes, I find that like really kind of heartwarming and touching. And I found it really heartwarming when Dash Wilder punched that guy in the face, is what I'm trying to say.
I agree. I mean, I'm not really one to wish violence upon people, but like that dude had it coming.
Yeah.
He had it coming,
yeah.
So I didn't feel too bad about that at all. Like, not at all.
I also like, I don't like the idea of like, you know, violence as a punishment for anything like that. But if you're foolish enough to jump into a wrestling ring and attack Bret the Hitman Hart in a room full of wrestlers, you know what? I'll look the other way on this one.
All right. You've been a newer fan, I guess. Is there anything that you would like to see improve in the WWE?
Oh, wow. I mean, I think I would really love to see Vince McMahon release his stranglehold on creative at the company. Like, the guy, like, he can serve as a figurehead. He can even trot himself out and play his character on TV when he wants to. But I just feel that, you know, if the future looks anything like what his daughter and son-in-law are doing at NXT, but with the production value and scale of his big shows, I think the future is going to be great. I think that there's just much better ideas, and also a lot more, there are a lot more like apparent, palpable, like progressive values apparent in the stuff that's being handled by NXT. And you can see that stuff gets just wringed out by Vince's hand when they get, you know, pulled up to the main roster. I would like to see WWE be more, not just passively, but actively welcoming to its LGBTQ audience. Because the fact of the matter is that I feel there's a stereotype among people who don't watch wrestling about wrestling fandom, and that it's, you know, kind of a bunch of like hillbillies who want to chant USA when like the bad guy comes in who's a brown guy. And like, it's kind of a bygone concept, but it's not a terribly bygone concept because Vince, there's a part of him that still kind of panders to this older, very, very Make America Great Again sort of audience that he feels is like probably his bread and butter. And it seems to like, there seems to be kind of like a very frequent, just a blatant ignoring of the fact that wrestling fandom transcends age and gender and race and orientation, and it's enjoyed by so many people that still have to like tolerate being kind of like insulted by the product all the time. And I think that they have made great strides with the way they have used the women on the roster, in the past couple of years. They've come a long way since like, bikini matches and divas, but it's still like not nearly enough. And I think that the future of that product is going to be sensational once Vince is in hospice. I mean,
oh my goodness.
Okay, maybe a bit cruel, but he is kind of a vampire. And I think that they are on the right path toward doing things. I'm excited to see where the future of it goes, and I'm excited to hopefully have fewer and fewer moments where after like a couple of good weeks of programming to have like a moment pop up where you're like, oh my God, what are you doing? Why are you doing? Oh, and it's just like, it just hurts. I feel like a slight bit of shame because I'm buying this man's product. So I would like to see that. I would like to see them do things like give Kofi Kingston the championship without breaking their arms, patting themselves on the back for it. Like that was a sensational match. It was a sensational build up to Kofi getting that title, but it's just, it couldn't come without Vince like practically looking into the camera and being like, look, I'm a pretty good guy now. See what I did? I let the black guy be the champion. I'm not so bad. It was all kind of done at this, felt like this kind of pageantry, this like pandering pageantry that he's done. Whereas I feel like, if Hunter and Stephanie were in charge, things might be better.
I regularly enjoy the NXT takeovers more than the preceding the big pay-per-views that they're attached to. Mm-hmm. Like all the NXT takeovers I've seen, I just enjoy. I like the wrestling aspect of pro wrestling first and foremost. I like a good match. I like it. I mean, yes, they can tell stories in the ring. So, like, when I watched WrestleMania 35, there was, like, a handful of matches that I really enjoyed, but the rest I was just like,
Oh, yeah. Like, a lot of their, like, tentpole matches for that show were kind of snoozy. I mean, Brock Lesnar has not been an entertaining performer for as long as I've been watching, and that match was not exciting. It was exciting to see the narrative result of it, but even then it was kind of sullied by, like, I had to watch, like, 6 more F5s and fall asleep. But yeah, takeovers are consistently spectacular. And it for not just for, again, sort of like the values that are written into it, but just the sheer performance aspect of it. These are like young, hungry, innovative stars that are like given some slack on their leashes to like actually try things out and kind of like push this entertainment forward. And holy God, TakeOver this year was amazing.
Agreed. I meant to comment on what you were talking about earlier. I agree with you that like when the NXT stars go up, it's just like whatever magic that they had down there gets ringed out by Vince. Shinsuke Nakamura, Asuka.
Oh my God. Yeah, just shameful. Those two are like, they're just rock stars. And they've gotten little moments of shine here and there, basically when they first came up, because they wanted to like be like, because again, it was like Vince looking in the camera being like, look at these exciting new stars. You liked them on NXT. Look, she won the Royal Rumble. But then it's like in a couple of weeks, she just gets buried at the bottom of the roster again, just very shamefully, like kind of buried. And I'm like, I think that like I speak for a lot of wrestling fans and hopefully you as well, that I can't cross my fingers hard enough and pray that Velveteen Dream does not get called up during Vince's run at the company, because Vince will ruin him.
I foresee that happening as well, actually.
Vince is like Velveteen Dream is just a magical all around like performer, stuntman, wrestler. He's great, and he has such a unique angle that there's nothing about him that Vince is going to honor. He'll pair him up in some inexplicable tag team. He'll pair him with like No Way Jose and let them both like.
Oh my god!
they'll let the two of them open dark matches at SmackDown tapings, and then that'll be it, and it'll disappear, and it'll be sad and embarrassing, and it won't make sense. Or they'll bring him up and they'll put him in a different tag team, and they'll change his tag team name to the Viking Experience for 1 week, and then change it to the Viking Raiders the next week.
I guess crossover mark out question for you: would you mark out if Matt Riddle came out wearing a tracksuit? Because he already says "bro."
Oh my god, I would lose my shit. I didn't even think about that. And like his music even opens with "bro." And there's like a storied history of superstars like low-key cosplaying as comic book characters. I would freaking die. He would become my favorite wrestler. And I don't like dislike him. I wasn't that like dazzled by him until I saw that his match with Dream at Takeover Live. Like when I saw it in person, I was like, I'm on board with Matt Riddle now. And I'm on board with this whole shtick. But if he came out in a Hawkeye tracksuit, it would be like chocolate in my peanut butter. Somebody would have just taken all of the things I loved and just like put them in a big mix. It would be like if somebody came to me and be like, "Would you like some Beastie Boys Star Wars?" Why, yes, I would like some Matt Riddle in a tracksuit. Yes. Squeeze it all together.
One more wrestling question. Do you foresee yourself potentially down the road doing like because Mega Ran has the Matt Mania albums. Do you see you and him tag teaming on a wrestling compilation album?
Well, for the third Matt Mania album, first of all, I think his Matt Mania records are brilliant. And I even though I've only done these 2 wrestling songs, I'm trying to be very conscious about not just doing the thing that he's doing. Like, I love all of the Matt Mania records. Like, I like wrestlers more now because of songs Mega Ran wrote about them. Like, when I first started watching, I wasn't that into Kevin Owens. And then I heard his Kevin Owens song, and I feel like that made me a Kevin Owens fan. And now he's like one of my favorites. But on his Matt Mania records, where he will take like a beat arranged out of samples of a superstar's theme and then write kind of a tribute song about that wrestler, I'm definitely trying to not do that, because that's Mega Ran's like corner. I'm just trying to write songs about the world of wrestling that may use superstar theme samples, but try to not make them about specifics. I like I'm looking forward toward like experimenting with that a little bit more. When he did his third Matt Mania record, it was a compilation where he just collected a bunch of his favorite like wrestling songs from some of his friends, and One Fall. He put One Fall on that, which I was very touched by.
Oh yeah, sorry, man.
Oh no, that's fine. I was thrilled because I was just listening to the hell out of the first 2 Matt Manias, and I was like really honored to be on that third one. But yeah, I mean, it's got to be pretty transparent, or at least you're just very observant. But there is definitely a thing gnawing inside me that is me building up to pitching a sort of collaborative track or series of tracks with him that take place in the world of wrestling. But yeah, again, we got a lot of time coming up on the road together, and that's probably when I'm going to start during some long shifts leaning across and being like, "So Mega Ran." But again, I don't want to like feel like a Key has been doing this for a while, and I just kind of got into it really hard and fast, and like enjoying exploring it and exploring it musically, and I'm just trying to be mindful of not stepping on his toes. But at the same time, I'm trying to be very mindful of manipulating him into working with me on wrestling stuff. So I guess I'm kind of full of it.
And one last topic as we're wrapping up this interview. I had watched the 20-minute version of a David Lynch film that you did with The Pink Room, directed by Francine the Dream. I have never seen any of David's films, so I was a bit confused.
I'll bet. That must be like having like a fever nightmare if you don't. And actually, it's not even really that much better if you do know the references, because then it's just like going like, oh, I get what this shot is. They are referencing a movie that gave me fever dreams because none of it made sense. Like it's basically like very elaborate cosplay. But I've kind of tried to imagine what that 20-minute film, like short film experience must be like for people who are fans of mine who are not like familiar with the work of David Lynch. And I commend you for giving it a shot.
I mean, I watched your music video for it first, and then I bought the film, I rented the film from Vimeo.
Oh yeah,
to check out. I guess if you'd like to talk about your experience on that, was that like a dream come true? I'm sorry for the generic question on that one, but I left that open ended.
Yeah, which is good because it requires, again, like lots of kind of backstory and context. So Francine the Lucid Dream is a dear friend of mine. She's a burlesque performer and producer in New York City. And about, probably I think in 2010, when she was kind of a new performer, she, at that time, a lot of burlesque producers were trying their hand at burlesque performers were trying their hand at producing their own shows based on whatever kind of theme they wanted to see. And she had been a lifelong Twin Peaks and David Lynch fan, and she had produced a David Lynch, I guess it was specifically a Twin Peaks themed burlesque show. And hell in each audience, like this is kind of long before, the Twin Peaks fandom kind of resurged in a big way. And she did this show, and I went to it because I was an MC for burlesque events at that time. I am still, I guess, but for a lot of them at that time. And also, I was a passionate Twin Peaks and David Lynch fan, and had been since the show originally aired on television. And I went to see this show, and I was just kind of beside myself because I'm like, you made this work. David Lynch's stuff is so weird and obtuse and kind of alienating in its artsiness, and you present this very like entertaining burlesque show based on these characters of this world. I just was shameless in how I just like approached her and was like, I don't know what I have to do, but I want to be a part of this. I want to host this sometime, please. I will. And this is so it's more like 2011. And her next show was going to be not a Twin Peaks show, but a tribute to the film Mulholland Drive, which is David Lynch's 2001 movie. At this time, when we weren't even that close yet, barely knew each other, to try to secure this gig, I said to her, if you let me host this show, I'll even write a rap song for it. I'll write a song about, and I'll reference all of David Lynch's movies, and that'll be a rap song, because like I'm kind of embarrassed for myself looking back. I was just like throwing myself at her. Please let me play in your world. Please, please, please. Well, it ended up working out, and she called me on it. So I had to write this song. And now it's 8 years later, and I have been basically the exclusive host for that show for years. We've done countless shows in New York, in other cities, on the road. I have built and performed and played as like, I built like cosplays and hosted the show as like, I don't know, something like 20 different characters in the time I've been doing it. All of our friends who work in the show they have multiple acts, multiple characters and elaborate costumes. And I still have this song that I wrote to try to get into the show that is now a tradition that I perform that song at the top of every show. I don't know when the conversation started, but one day, she's also a photographer and she wanted to get into filmmaking. And I'm sure it was her idea, but she had said that she had suggested we should make a music video for that song, and it'll also be like a promotional thing for the Pink Room, because we can just recreate a bunch of scenes from David Lynch movies, because at this point, all of the performers in the cast have multiple characters. We can probably represent almost every movie and various elements of Twin Peaks at the same time, and we'll make a music video for your song. And I think she even had the idea of doing the long cinematic Michael Jackson Thriller cut of it, but then also having the condensed, shorter 5-minute music video cut of it. And it just kind of worked because we all were very very close at that point from working on the show for so long. And she had very clear visions of as being a photographer and also just a lifelong David Lynch fan of the things that she wanted to shoot. This shoot took like 2 years. Like we started shooting it and then abandoned it for several months and then came back to it and wrapped it up. But like I have a beard in some of the footage. Like you can see time pass over the course of that music video. And I'm still just very proud of the work that we did. But really, I'm mostly saying I'm proud of the work that Francine did because she wrote it, she shot it, she edited it, she's in it, she plays like a half dozen characters in it. Like she really committed to making that music video in the same way she's committed to producing the Pink Room Burlesque live shows for years.
I thought it was a well-done video, especially from the cinematic point of view. So, obviously, I'm no videographer on that level, but I certainly enjoyed what I saw. And I enjoyed the music, too.
Oh, thank you. I think that is, she already had, like, very honed skills as being a photographer. And obviously, she, like, had, like, cinematic elements that she wanted to crib from these specific David Lynch things, but she had very clear visions for every one of those locations and every one of those shoots. And I don't even know what the final count was, but it's like a staggering number of locations and number of days that we shot. And it was kind of felt like working for David Lynch because he works kind of wildly and impulsively, though he still has very like sound, like secure ideas at the center. And just kind of likes to play and go and just like see what kind of roll film, compose like a beautiful shot and just see kind of like what chaos happens. And I think it's incredibly impressive for a person's first like sort of foray into videography coming from a photography background. I'm really impressed with the work that she did on that. And I'm glad that I have some of the memories of that very long shoot.
All right. And so we're wrapping this up with the final 3 questions.
Okay.
What's new that you would like to talk about / promote?
Well, obviously the newest thing that I don't have a new record out. The Department of Darkness is only about 6 months old at this point, so I'm still kind of pushing that product. But right now, the thing that I'm promoting the most is obviously the upcoming Mount Nerdcore tour with my homeboys, MC Frontalot, MC Lars, and Megaran. This is our 3rd annual leg of this tour. We did it in fall of 2017 throughout mostly the Northeast, all the way down the Eastern Seaboard. We did it in October of 2018 in Texas, down through the Southwest, all the way up the West Coast, and then back down through the Midwest. And then now in spring of 2019, we're starting in the kind of like upper Midwest, working our way around there, and then also working our way back down toward Florida again. So it's an annual tour that's only, about 3 weeks at a time, but slowly but surely we are managing to cover the entire country. And that kicks off on April 30th and runs through May, I think, 16th. There's full details and tickets available at nerdcoretour.com. But that's the thing I'm the most excited about. I cannot express how much fun it is to do these shows and just to travel with these guys. I've known all of them for over 10 years, and they're just some of the best people I've met from doing this over the years. And working with them is great, and the audiences are so great because if they're fans of any of us, they're generally pretty thrilled to get the opportunity to see all of us on one ticket. So that's what I'm mostly promoting.
I'm looking forward to that, and I will be at the Pontiac show coming up next weekend. I'm
excited to hang out with you in the real world at the Pontiac show.
Oh, I'll definitely come up and say hi, and for sure. If people wanted to find out more about you online, where could they go? SchäfferTheDarklord.com is the best place. It is a bare bones website, but it is basically just a collection of links to where you can find all of the pertinent musics and social medias and whatnots. So just go to SchäfferTheDarklord.com and you'll find Twitter and Instagram and Facebook and Bandcamp and Spotify and everything else from there. All right, and final question, what would you like to say to all your fans out there throughout the years?
Oh, my goodness. I would like to say, I don't want to say something that's terribly cliche or maudlin, like, thank you so much. I couldn't have done it without you. But I mean, since that is genuine, I just don't want to say it in that way because I feel like it's kind of a cop out, and I feel like fans pick up on that when you pander to them. Fans are not the marks that P.T. Barnum used to promote for. So I guess to make it more specific, I want to say to the fans that are still around, like, I have really challenged you over the years. I gave you a bunch of kind of like fun, welcoming stuff. And then I made you listen to a record about therapy. And then I have frequently challenged your values and your belief systems and made you kind of re-examine your place in the world and how behavior that may be second nature to you could possibly be problematic. And you've stuck around. And so I feel that like you have kind of grown up with me as I went from being kind of more of an obscene clown to being like an angry social justice warrior, that you have stuck around. And I feel that I really owe you my gratitude for not taking every swerve that I've thrown you as an invitation to exit and have stayed on this train. So thank you.
Schäffer, thank you so much for this interview. I truly do appreciate it.
It's my pleasure. Thank you so much again for having me.
All right. Well, folks, this is Joe from MIGeekScene talking with Schäffer the Darklord. Take it easy.